My name is Richa, and there is one evening in my life that changed everything. Even now, when I think about it, my chest grows heavy, like something deep inside me still has not healed. It was a quiet Thursday, the kind of day that slips through your fingers without leaving any special mark. I had just finished my shift at a small medical office where I work as a receptionist. The sky outside was gray, and the air felt cold in a way that made me want to go home as quickly as I could. I remember thinking about dinner. Maybe I would make pasta, or maybe I would just heat up leftovers. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. But life has this strange way of turning the most ordinary moments into something unforgettable. When I returned home from work, I found my daughter crying in the bathroom, but when she saw me, she became very angry. At first, I froze. Joy was usually the calm one. Sensitive, yes. A little shy, yes, but angry, no. Her eyes were red, her cheeks wet with tears, and her small hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She stared at me like I was the last person she wanted to see. "Joy, sweetheart," I said softly, stepping forward. She backed away fast as if my voice burned her. That hurt more than I can ever explain. A child stepping away from her mother feels like the whole world shifting. "Please," she said, her voice cracking, "just go away, Mom." I had never heard her speak like that. I had never seen her face twist with so much hurt. Everything in me wanted to run to her, to hold her, to wipe her tears like I had done since the day she was born. But I stopped at the doorway because some instinct told me this wasn't a moment to rush. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll step back, but please tell me what happened." Joy crossed her arms, still shaking. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said, putting my palms gently against the door frame. I didn't want to crowd her, I didn't want her to feel trapped. "Joy, it's me, I'm your mom." "That's the problem," she snapped. The words hit me in the chest like a physical blow. I didn't say anything, I let the silence stretch. The hallway felt colder than outside. Somewhere in the kitchen, the old fridge hummed softly. The whole house seemed to be holding its breath. Then Joy burst into sobs again, pressing her hands to her face, and something inside me cracked. I wanted to run inside and hug her, but I kept my distance. She had asked me to, and I respected that, even though it felt like my heart was being squeezed. After a few seconds, she slammed the bathroom door shut. The sound echoed through our small home like thunder, and I just stood there, alone in the hallway, listening to my daughter cry behind a closed door, a door that had never been shut between us before. That moment, that door, it was the beginning of a story I never imagined I would live. I moved slowly to the living room, my legs unsure beneath me. I sat down on the couch, feeling the fabric beneath my hands, grounding myself in the simple texture because everything else felt unreal. I stared at the hallway, at the closed bathroom door, replaying every moment of the past few weeks in my mind. Had I missed something? Had I overlooked some sign? Joy had been quieter lately, yes. She had been staying in her room more, but I thought it was just school pressure. Finals coming up. Friend groups shifting. Teen years beginning to unfold their usual storms. I didn't imagine something deeper was brewing. I didn't imagine that something connected to me, something I had done or not done, was hurting her. Parenthood never comes with warning signs. Problems don't arrive in boxes marked fragile. They slip in silently, hiding beneath daily routines, waiting for the right moment to erupt. And that evening the eruption came. I waited 10 minutes. Then 20. The house felt heavy. The clock's ticking grew louder, like it was pushing me toward a decision. Finally, the bathroom door opened. Joy stepped out. Her hair was messy, her face blotchy from crying. She didn't look like my confident little girl. She looked lost, like someone who didn't know what ground to stand on. She glanced at me, then immediately looked away. "Joy," I said softly, "please talk to me." She shook her head, her eyes turning wet again. "I can't." "You can," I said. "I'm right here." Her breath trembled. She bit her lip hard, then whispered, "You're not who I thought you were." Those words landed differently. Heavier, sharper, dangerous. I felt a chill run through me. What do you mean? Joy wiped her cheeks, swallowing her sobs. I saw something. My heart jumped. Saw what? What could she have seen? A message, a photo, a letter. My mind was flipping through possibilities like pages of a book I didn't want her to open. I saw something, she repeated, her voice breaking. Something in your room. My blood ran cold. But I kept my face calm, neutral, steady. Tell me what you saw. She shook her head again. If I tell you, you'll just lie, or you'll say it wasn't what it looked like. The accusations burned, but I held steady. Joy, I would never lie to you. She met my eyes for a brief second, and in that moment I saw it: fear, not anger, fear, fear of losing trust, fear of losing me, fear of something she couldn't fully understand. I softened my voice. Joy, sweetheart. I love you more than anything in this world. Whatever you saw, whatever you think you know, we can talk about it, we can work through it. She stared at me, and then suddenly she ran straight to her room. The door slammed again, and this time I didn't chase her, I let her go. My heart wanted to run after her, but my mind knew forcing the moment would only push her farther away. So I sat there again, listening to silence. A silence thicker than any I had known. As I sat alone, memories began swirling in my mind, memories I had pushed away for years. Old mistakes, old secrets, things I hoped Joy would never learn, things from before she was born, things I never imagined would find their way to her. But children have a way of stumbling into hidden corners, into old boxes, into forgotten drawers. And sometimes what they find changes everything. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. I remembered the top shelf of my closet. The wooden box I had not opened in a long, long time. The letters I had kept inside. Letters I should have thrown away. Letters that belonged to a life before Joy and before Gary. Gary, my husband, Joy's father, or rather the man Joy believed was her father. My stomach twisted. Had she found those letters? Had she found the truth? Had she found the one thing I prayed would stay buried for the rest of my life? I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to stop the memories from spilling out, but they came anyway. Because secrets never stay quiet forever. And that night, it felt like the past had finally walked through the front door of my home. I didn't sleep, not for a second. I stayed on the couch, staring at Joy's closed bedroom door, listening for any sign that she might come out. A soft step, a sniffle, anything, but there was nothing, just silence. The next morning, Joy left early for school without looking at me. She walked past me like I was a stranger standing in her hallway. Like the bond we had built over 14 years had snapped in one night. I watched her leave, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her steps fast, almost shaky. As soon as the door closed, I leaned against the wall, my breath heavy. The house felt empty without her, even though she was only gone for the day. I knew I couldn't let things stay like this. I needed to know exactly what she had seen. I needed to face it. I went straight to my room, opened the closet, pulled the wooden box from the top shelf. It was slightly open, not the way I had left it. I felt my knees weaken. She had opened it. She had read something. She had seen the truth. And the truth was a story I never wanted her to discover. A story I thought I had buried long ago. A story about the man before Gary and the life I left behind. I held the box in my hands, feeling the weight of my past pressing into my palms. And in that moment, standing alone in my quiet bedroom, I knew this wasn't just about Joy crying in the bathroom. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would test every part of me as a mother, as a wife, and as a woman who thought she could hide from her past. The morning after Joy found the box, I moved slowly through the house as if the walls themselves might collapse if I breathed too hard. The silence felt different now, not peaceful, not comforting. It felt like a question waiting to be answered. Like the house knew something I hadn't admitted out loud. The wooden box sat on my dresser, closed again, but not the same. It felt heavier now, as if Joy's tears had soaked into it somehow. I kept touching it, running my fingers along the grain, feeling the tiny scratches on the lid. It was an old box, older than my marriage, older than most of my adult life. I had carried it with me from apartment to apartment, from state to state, never opening it, never throwing it away. Always telling myself it didn't matter, that it was only memories, nothing more, but children notice things. They notice more than we think. And Joy, she had always been observant. Ever since she was a toddler, she used to pick up on moods, on tones of voice, on tiny shifts in the air. If I came home tired, she would look at me for 2 seconds and then bring me a blanket. If Gary and I had a small disagreement, she would sit quietly between us the next morning, like she could feel something was off even though we didn't argue loudly. I should have known she would find the box eventually. I should have known secrets only stay buried until someone digs. I made myself a cup of coffee, though I barely tasted it. The steam curled upward in gentle ribbons, fogging my glasses for a second before fading. Outside, the sun was coming up slowly, casting a soft orange glow across the backyard. The fence needed repainting. The grass was dry from last week's heat. The swing Gary built for Joy years ago was still there, blue seat, fraying ropes, tiny handprints from when she was 8. So many memories. So many moments that felt safe. I wondered if Joy still saw this place as home, or if the bathroom door closing last night had changed everything. I sat at the kitchen table and tried to think clearly. But the thoughts that came weren't logical or organized. They were emotional, tangled, messy. Should I talk to her again? Should I wait? Should I explain the past before she even asked? The truth was complicated, painful, and the truth involved someone Joy had never met, someone I hoped she would never have to. At 8:30, Gary came into the kitchen. He looked tired, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he walked toward the coffee maker. "Morning," he mumbled, then paused when he saw my face. "You didn't sleep, did you?" I shook my head. He sat across from me, leaning his elbows on the table. "Is this about Joy leaving early?" "She was upset last night," I said softly. "Really upset." "What happened?" he asked, concern tightening his voice. I hesitated. I didn't want to tell him anything until I talked to Joy first. It didn't feel right. This wasn't about him. This was about me and my daughter. This was about something she had discovered that I should have told her long ago. "She found something," I said carefully. "In our room," he frowned. "What did she find?" I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I couldn't say it, not yet. I wasn't ready for his reaction. I wasn't ready to face the conversation I had avoided for 14 years. "I'll talk to her after school," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Gary watched me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, if you need me, I'm here." I smiled, though it felt weak. Gary was a good man, a steady man. He had been with me through hard times, through changes, through moments when I didn't think I could keep going. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he had always been gentle with me. The irony was painful. The secret Joy had discovered wasn't about Gary doing something wrong. It was about me, my past, my choices. Gary kissed my forehead and left for work. I stayed at the table, staring at the empty chair across from me. The day moved slowly, too slowly. I cleaned the house even though it didn't need cleaning. I rearranged the towels, wiped the counters twice, organized the pantry, anything to keep my hands busy because my mind was already spinning fast enough. Every time I passed the hallway, I looked toward Joy's room. Every time I walked by the closet, I glanced at the wooden box. At noon, I sat down on the edge of my bed and pulled the box onto my lap. For years I had avoided touching it. But now, for the first time in a long time, I opened it. The lid creaked softly. Inside were letters, some folded neatly, some bent at the edges. Old photographs faded. A bracelet with beads spelling out a name I hadn't said out loud in years. A keychain shaped like a baseball glove, a hospital bracelet with my name on it and a date printed beneath it. My hands trembled as I lifted one of the letters. The handwriting was familiar, sharp and slanted. Richa, it began, I know I've made mistakes. I closed my eyes, letting the memories rise like fog from a lake. His name was Mark. I had met him before I moved to Ohio, before I met Gary, before my life settled into something safe. Mark had been charming, unpredictable, exciting. The kind of man who could make you feel alive and frightened at the same time. The kind of man you always think you can fix. The kind you never really can. We were young when we met. Too young to understand what real love should look like. Mark was the first person I ever trusted completely. And the first person to break that trust in ways I didn't see coming. It took me years to understand that leaving him wasn't just a choice, it was survival. I left quietly with a single suitcase and a bus ticket. I left when he didn't expect it. I left knowing I couldn't build a life with him. What I didn't know was that I had left with something else growing inside me. Joy. I never told Mark I was pregnant. I never told him I was leaving. I never gave him a chance to change or hurt me again. When I met Gary, he accepted Joy as his own from the beginning. He never asked about the missing pieces of my past. He respected my silence. He let me share what I wanted when I wanted, and I chose not to tell Joy anything because I wanted her to grow up safe, loved, stable. But secrets don't fade just because we want them to. They wait. They wait for the moment when a child opens a box that doesn't belong to her and tries to understand words written before she was born. I placed the letter back inside the box and closed the lid gently. The weight of it felt different now. Heavier, more urgent. I needed to talk to Joy. I needed to fix this before it grew into something bigger. At 3:15, I heard the front door open. The air in the house shifted, like everything had been holding still until she walked through. Joy didn't look at me when she entered. She dropped her backpack near the stairs and walked straight to her room. Joy, I called, my voice soft. She didn't answer, didn't slow, didn't even turn her head. Her door closed again, not slammed, just closed firmly. I followed her slowly, stopping before her door. Honey, can we talk? Silence. I tried again. Joy, I know you're hurting. I promise I'm not angry. I just want to understand. More silence. My heart tightened. Please let me in. After a long moment, I heard the faint sound of footsteps. The door opened an inch. Joy's eyes peeked through the narrow gap. She looked tired, emotionally drained, but not angry like before. What do you want? She asked quietly. To talk, I said, only if you're ready. She hesitated, then opened the door fully. Her room looked the same as always: posters, art supplies, a pile of laundry she hadn't folded, fairy lights strung across the window, but the air felt different, heavy, tense. Joy sat on the bed. I sat on the chair near the desk, giving her space. We stayed quiet for a moment. Finally, she said, I didn't mean to look through your stuff. I know, I replied. You don't have to apologize. She lowered her eyes. I was looking for a sweater. I thought maybe it ended up in your closet, and I saw the box. I nodded. Okay. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy, she whispered. I swear. I believe you, I said gently. Joy took a shaky breath. But when I opened it and saw the letters, I didn't understand. My heart squeezed. What didn't you understand? She looked at me like she was searching for the right words. Mom, who is Mark? I inhaled slowly, letting the name settle in the air between us. She had said it out loud, the name I had kept buried. Mark was someone I knew a long time ago, I answered softly, her eyes filled with tears again. Was he my dad? The question hung there, sharp and fragile, and I felt like the room grew smaller around us. I didn't answer right away. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I needed her to see the truth in my face, not just hear it in my voice. After a long, quiet moment, I nodded. Joy covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes widening with hurt. So Gary isn't my real father. Gary is your father, I said gently. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. But you lied, she whispered. You never told me. You never told him either, did you? I swallowed. No, I didn't. Why? Joy asked. Why would you hide something like that from me? I looked at her, my daughter, my heart walking around outside my body, and realized I owed her the truth. Not the sanitized version, the real one. It's a long story, I said quietly. I want to hear it, she replied, wiping her cheeks. And in that moment I knew it was time to open up the past, time to explain everything, time to tell her what I had never told anyone. I took a deep breath. Joy watched me waiting. Okay, I whispered. I'll tell you everything, but please don't be afraid and don't think any of this changes how much I love you. Joy nodded slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. And as I began to speak, the past, the one I had locked away for so many years, began to unfold in front of us piece by piece. But neither of us knew the past wasn't done with us yet, not even close. Because sometimes, when you open an old door, someone else walks through it. Joy sat quietly on her bed, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her eyes were still swollen from crying, but she looked calmer than the night before. Not healed, not okay. Just calmer, like she was bracing herself for something painful, but she was ready to hear it. I sat in the chair near her desk, my hands folded together so tightly that my fingers had started to feel numb. Joy, I began softly, before I tell you anything about Mark, I want you to know one thing. You were never unwanted. Not for a single moment. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Joy didn't answer. She just nodded a little, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. I took a slow breath. I wanted to speak carefully, but I also wanted to be honest. She deserved honesty. When I was your age, I said, I was different from you. I was quieter, more insecure. I didn't stand up for myself the way you do. I didn't know how to walk away from people who weren't good for me. Joy's eyes lifted, studying me. And that's when I met Mark, I continued. He was older, not by much, maybe 3 years, but he felt older, more experienced, more confident. He knew how to make someone feel seen. And when you're young and unsure of yourself, that kind of attention feels like the sun. I paused, thinking back to those early days. They felt like a lifetime ago, like someone else's memories. But as I spoke them into the room, they became mine again. For a while, I said, he made me feel special, like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible. Joy's hands tightened around the pillow. But over time, I continued, things changed. He became controlling, easily upset. He wanted to know where I was every minute, who I talked to, what I wore. At first, I thought he cared. That's the sad part. When you don't understand what love is, it's easy to mistake possessiveness for affection. Joy let out a slow breath. Did he ever hurt you? Her question broke something inside me. She asked it softly, carefully, but the weight of it was so heavy. Not the way you're thinking, I said gently. He never hit me, but he hurt me in other ways, ways that stayed with me longer. I let the words settle. I didn't want to overwhelm her. One day, I said, I realized I couldn't stay. I didn't want a life where I had to apologize for breathing differently. I didn't want to lose myself completely, so I left. And you didn't tell him you were pregnant? Joy asked. I shook my head. No, I didn't even know at the time. I moved states, got a new job, started over, and then I found out I was expecting you. Joy lowered her head, silent again. I was scared, I said honestly. I was alone, I didn't have money, I didn't have anyone to help me, but I had you, and that gave me strength I didn't know I had. Joy's voice cracked. But why didn't you tell me? I felt my throat tight. Because I wanted your life to be simple. I wanted your childhood to feel safe. I didn't want you to feel unwanted or confused. I didn't want you to grow up thinking something was missing. But Gary, she whispered. Did he know? No, I admitted. He didn't. When we met, he accepted everything about me and loved you from the moment he saw you. I didn't want to complicate that. I didn't want him to feel second in any way. And I didn't want you to feel like you belonged halfway between two worlds. Joy looked down at her hands. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was only protecting myself. Joy took a shaky breath. I don't know what to feel. I know, I said, and you don't have to decide right now. You can take as much time as you need. But even as I spoke, I could see something in her eyes, something beyond sadness, something deeper, a fear I didn't recognize. It made my stomach twist. "Joy," I said carefully, "did you read all the letters?" She hesitated, then nodded. My heart thudded. "All of them?" "Yes," she whispered. "Even the one he wrote after you left." I swallowed hard. That letter was the one I had never been able to make myself throw away. The letter where Mark wrote that he would find me someday, that he would fix things, that he would take back what was his. Empty threats from a hurt young man, maybe. But they had scared me enough to never go back. "What did you think when you read it?" I asked gently. Joy's eyes filled again. I thought maybe he was still out there." I placed my hand over my mouth, feeling the tremble in my chin. "Sweetheart, I'm sure he moved on. It's been 15 years. He doesn't know where we live. He doesn't know anything." "But what if he does?" she whispered. "What if he finds out about me?" Those words pierced me. Not because they were likely, Mark had disappeared from my life a long time ago, but because those were fears a child should never have to carry. I moved from the chair and sat beside her on the bed. "Joy, look at me." She wiped her face and lifted her eyes. "No one is coming for you. You are safe. You are loved, and nothing from my past can change that." Joy leaned slightly against me, not fully, not like she used to, but just enough to let me know she still wanted me near. I thought our family was perfect," she said. "I thought I knew everything about us." I stroked her hair gently. "Families aren't perfect, honey. They're a mix of mistakes and love and trying our best even when we don't know how. I never wanted you to carry my past, but I should have trusted you with the truth sooner." Joy nodded weakly, but the worry didn't disappear from her expression. And that worry, it stayed with me long after we ended the conversation. That evening, after Joy had gone downstairs to heat up leftovers, Gary came home. He looked between the two of us, noticing the quiet tension instantly. "Everything okay?" he asked carefully. Joy didn't answer. She kept her eyes on her plate, pushing peas around with her fork. I forced a smile. "Just a long day." Gary watched me, really watched me, and I could tell he wasn't convinced. But he didn't push. He knew me well enough to know I would talk when I was ready. Only this time, I wasn't sure I ever would be. He sat down across from us, opened a take-out container he had brought from work, and tried to lighten the mood. He told a small joke about something that happened in the parking lot. Normally, Joy would have laughed. That night she didn't. She didn't look at him at all. And I knew she was thinking about the truth. I knew she was comparing the man she had loved as her father with the man she had never met. That kind of confusion is too big for a young heart. After dinner, Gary went to take a shower. Joy went to her room. And I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the sink full of dishes, feeling like the whole house was slowly cracking. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. My stomach tightened. I almost didn't answer, but some instinct told me to. "Hello," I said. The line was quiet for a long second. Then a man's voice, low, calm, too familiar, spoke. "Richa." Everything in me froze, my breath, my heartbeat, my thoughts. It couldn't be. It couldn't. I gripped the edge of the counter, my fingers trembling. "It's been a long time," the voice said. I felt the world tilt. It was him, Mark, my past, my secret, the man Joy had read about just last night. "How did you get this number?" I whispered. "I've been looking for you," he said softly. "For years." My knees weakened. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely audible. A small pause. Then, "I want to see my daughter." My heart stopped. "No," I said instantly. "You have no right." "I have every right," he interrupted. "She's mine." "She is not," I snapped before I could stop myself. My voice shook. "You don't get to walk into her life after disappearing for 15 years. He exhaled slowly. "I didn't disappear, Richa, you did." My throat tightened. "Where is she?" he asked quietly. "I just want to see her." "No," I said again. "You stay away from us." He didn't reply, but the silence on the line felt different now. He wasn't angry. He wasn't upset. He was confident, like he already knew something I didn't. "I'm going to find you," he said finally. "We have unfinished business." And before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. My pulse hammered in my ears. The kitchen lights felt too bright. He found me, after all these years. He found me. The wooden box, the letters, Joy's fear, it all made sense now. I stood there in the silent kitchen, feeling everything crumble inside me. The one thing I had prayed would never happen had happened. My past had finally found its way back. And worse, it was coming straight toward my daughter. After the call ended, I stood frozen in the kitchen, unable to breathe. My phone felt like a stone in my hand. My heart was beating so loudly it felt like the sound filled the whole room. I kept hearing his voice in my head, calm, steady, too familiar. I want to see my daughter. Daughter, that word hit me like a punch every time I replayed it. Joy wasn't his daughter, not in the ways that mattered, not in the ways that counted, not in the ways she needed, but to him she was a claim, a possession, something he believed he had rights to. I pressed my hand to the counter to steady myself. My knees were shaking so badly I thought I might collapse. The house felt too quiet, too still, too small to hold the weight of the past suddenly pressing into it. A memory flickered through my mind, me, younger, scared, packing my single suitcase in the middle of the night, praying he wouldn't come back home before I left. My hands had shaken then too. My heart had raced then too. And now all those old feelings came back like they'd been waiting under the surface for years. I didn't want Joy to live with that fear. Not even for a moment. Not because of me. Not because of my history. Not because of a man she didn't even know existed. I closed my eyes, trying to gather myself, when suddenly I heard footsteps. Gary walked into the kitchen, drying his hair with a towel, unaware of the storm inside me. "Hey," he said lightly, "you okay? You look pale." I swallowed hard, forcing air into my lungs. "I'm fine." But my voice trembled and he heard it. He stepped closer. "Richa, what's going on?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. How could I tell him? How could I explain everything in one breath? 14 years of silence. 14 years of omission. 14 years of choices I made alone. And now the past was pounding on our door, literally. "Did something happen with Joy again?" Gary asked. "No," I whispered, "not Joy, it's something else." He studied me, concern growing deeper. "Then tell me, please." Before I could speak, we heard a sudden loud knock on the front door. I jumped so hard I almost dropped my phone. Gary frowned. "Who is that this late?" My heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. He couldn't be here already. He couldn't have found me that fast, could he? Another knock, harder this time. Joy peeked out from her room upstairs. "Mom, who is that?" I forced a steady voice. "It's okay, honey, stay upstairs." Gary looked at me sharply. "What's going on?" But I couldn't answer. I was too focused on the door. The knock came again, this time longer, sharper, like the person on the other side was impatient. My breath caught in my throat. Gary walked toward the entryway. "Wait," I whispered, grabbing his arm without thinking. He stopped and turned, confused by my fear. "Richa." I shook my head, my voice barely audible. "Please, just be careful." He frowned even deeper. "Do you know who it is?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, I just have a bad feeling." Gary straightened his shoulders, then opened the front door. My entire body tensed. But instead of Mark, we found a small figure standing on the porch, a young boy from our neighborhood holding a box of fundraising chocolates for his school. Gary exhaled with relief. I nearly collapsed. "Hi, Mr. Taylor," the boy said cheerfully. "Do you want to buy some chocolate?" Gary bought 2 boxes. He made small talk. He smiled. I stood behind him, trembling, gripping the back of a chair so tightly my fingers hurt. And the whole time, I felt like the world had played a cruel trick on me, giving me a moment of terror just to show me how afraid I really was. After the boy left, Gary closed the door and turned toward me. "Okay," he said, not angry, not sharp, just deeply serious. "Something is wrong, you need to tell me what it is." I felt my chest tighten. Emotions piled on top of each other: guilt, fear, shame, exhaustion. I sank onto the couch, my body too shaky to stand. Gary sat across from me waiting. Even Joy, still on the stairs, watched quietly. I took a long breath. "I got a phone call," I said. Gary nodded slowly. "Who was it?" I tried to steady my hands, but they kept trembling. "Someone from my past." "What past?" he asked. "What's going on?" I looked up, meeting his eyes. "It was Mark." Gary froze. The room went silent. "Mark," he repeated quietly. I nodded. "The man I told you about before," I said. "The one I left." Gary's face slowly shifted: confusion, realization, shock. "He called you?" he asked. "Yes." Gary took a slow breath through his nose, trying to keep his voice calm. "What did he want?" I felt tears prick my eyes. "He said he wants to see Joy." Gary's jaw clenched. His entire expression changed, not with anger, but with a steady, controlled fear. "And what did you tell him?" he asked. "That he has no right, that he needs to stay away." I swallowed. "But he said he's going to find us." I watched Gary's hand tighten on his knee. He wasn't a dramatic man. He didn't panic easily. Seeing him shaken made everything feel more real. "Richa," he whispered. "How did he get your number?" "I don't know." "Did you give it to anyone from your old town? Have you talked to anyone recently? Did you maybe reach out?" "No," I said quickly. "I've been careful. I haven't spoken to anyone who knew him." Gary leaned back on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "So he just found you?" "Out of nowhere." "Yes," I whispered. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Joy came down the stairs slowly, her face pale. "Mom," she said softly, "is he dangerous?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt something inside me break. "No," Gary said immediately, trying to reassure her. "We don't know anything yet. It might not be what it sounds like." But I saw his eyes. He didn't believe his own words. Joy walked toward me and sat beside me on the couch. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "He scared you," she whispered. I nodded. "He did." "What are we going to do?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. For the first time in years, I truly didn't know what came next. Gary stood up. "I need some air." He stepped outside onto the porch, shutting the door gently behind him. Joy leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom, I'm so sorry if I hadn't opened that box." "This isn't your fault," I said firmly. "You didn't cause this." But deep down, a part of me wondered if opening that box had somehow triggered a chain of events I couldn't stop. Not because Joy touched it, but because I had kept it, because I had held on to the past instead of letting it go. Gary came back inside after a few minutes. He looked calmer now, more focused. "We need to talk," he said. He sat across from us again. "I need to know everything," he said quietly. "Everything about Mark, everything about your past. Everything you've been afraid to say." I inhaled deeply. Joy squeezed my hand. I told them everything. Not just the parts I had carefully chosen over the years, not the edited, softened version. I told them the whole story, the good moments, the bad ones, the fear, the leaving, the pregnancy, the letters, the threats. I told them about the night I left, how quiet I had to be, how fast my heart was beating, how I had cried the entire bus ride to Ohio. I told Gary how I never meant to lie. I told Joy how I only wanted her to grow up safe. By the time I finished, the sky outside had turned dark. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Gary exhaled softly. "Okay," Joy asked. What are we going to do about him?" Gary looked at me. "Richa, do you think he's dangerous now?" "I don't know," I whispered. He sounded calm, too calm, like he wasn't surprised to find me, like he already knew he would. Gary's eyes widened slightly. "He didn't ask where we lived," I added quietly. "He didn't ask what state we're in. He didn't ask anything." Joy's breath caught. "Mom, does that mean—" I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to give voice to the fear I felt, but the truth was heavy and it sat between us like a shadow. "It means," I said slowly, "he might already know exactly where we are." Joy grabbed my arm, her fingers tight. Gary stood again, pacing slowly, thinking deeply. "We need to take precautions," he said. "To be smart." We could call the police, I said. Yes, but what do we tell them? Gary asked. He hasn't done anything yet. He made a vague statement, nothing direct enough for them to act. He was right. Even if I told them everything, the police couldn't do much over a phone call from someone who hadn't shown up, hadn't threatened violence, hadn't broken any laws. Joy looked at both of us, fear rising again. What if he comes here? Gary walked over and knelt in front of her. If he ever comes near this house, I will handle it. I will protect you both. I promise. Joy nodded, but her eyes were full of worry. I reached for her hand. We're not alone, sweetheart. We have each other. But even as I said the words, a chill ran through me. Because deep down, I knew something was coming. I could feel it in the air, a quiet pressure, a shift in the wind, like the world was holding its breath. That night, none of us slept well. Joy stayed in my room. Gary stayed awake most of the night on the couch, watching the window, listening for any sound outside. And I lay awake beside my daughter, staring at the ceiling, knowing the past had finally found its way into our present, and it wasn't going to leave quietly. It was going to demand attention. It was going to demand answers. It was going to demand something from us, and I had no idea how to stop it. But the next morning, something happened. Something none of us expected. Something that would change everything. It began with a sound, a simple, quiet sound, the sound of a car engine outside our house, a car we did not recognize. A car that remained parked on the street, engine running for far too long. Joy peeked through the blinds. Mom, someone's out there. Gary stood up immediately, tension in his shoulders. I moved to the window, my heart pounding. A dark sedan sat across the street, the engine still running, headlights off, windows tinted, my breath caught. I didn't know who was inside, but deep in my bones I felt it. The past had arrived, right outside our home, and nothing would ever be the same again. The dark sedan stayed across the street for what felt like forever. None of us moved at first. We just stood near the window, watching it, listening to the engine humming low in the quiet morning air. Joy clung to my arm. Gary stood close behind us, his jaw tight, his breath slow and steady like he was trying hard to stay calm. We didn't know who was inside. We didn't know if it was him. We didn't know if we were overreacting or not reacting enough. But every instinct inside me whispered, this is the moment everything changes. After about a minute, Gary spoke in a steady voice. I'm going out there. My heart jumped. No, Gary, not alone. Joy shook her head quickly. Please don't. What if it's him? Gary turned to us, his face softer now. I won't go far. I just want to see the license plate, maybe the driver. We need to know. I hesitated, torn between fear and trust. But he was right, we needed answers. We needed to know who or what had found us, so I nodded slowly. Be careful, I whispered. I will, he said. He stepped outside, walking calmly, not rushing, not showing fear. I watched through the window, my chest tight, my fingers twisting the hem of my sleeve. The car didn't move. Gary took a few steps closer. Still no movement. Joy's grip on me tightened. Mom. It's okay, I whispered, though I didn't believe it. Gary made it to the edge of our driveway, glanced casually toward the car, and then the sedan suddenly pulled away, not fast, not slow, just quietly. Smoothly, as if the driver didn't want to be noticed. The car drove down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. Joy exhaled shakily. I felt my knees weaken. Gary came back inside, closing the door behind him. No plates? I asked. He shook his head. Tinted. Couldn't see the driver either. Joy swallowed. Do you think it was him? Gary didn't answer right away. He looked at me like he wanted me to be the one to say it. I took a long breath. I don't know, I said, but someone was watching us. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The house felt too quiet again, but in a different way, not the silence of peace, but the silence of waiting. Waiting for something we couldn't predict. Later that evening, after hours of checking windows, locking doors, and listening too closely to every passing car, we finally decided we needed to breathe again. Let's sit together, Gary suggested gently. Not talk about the car, just be together. So we sat on the couch, Gary on one side, Joy leaning against me on the other. The TV played softly in the background, not for entertainment, but for comfort. Something about the low chatter made the house feel less tense. After a while, Joy spoke in a small voice. "Mom, will he come back?" The question weighed heavy. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to feed her fear, so I answered honestly, simply, "I don't know, sweetheart, but if he does, we'll face it together." She nodded slowly. "And nothing he says or does will change who you are," I added. "You're my daughter, my heart, my whole world." Joy blinked away tears. Gary reached over and rested his hand on my knee, a quiet gesture of support. "We're not running anymore," he said softly. His words warmed something inside me, something that had been cold for years. I had spent so much of my life running from danger, running from memories, running from possibilities. Maybe it was time to stop. The next morning, I did something I had been afraid to do ever since the phone call. I called the police. Not to report a crime because technically none had happened, but to document everything. The call, the car, the years of fear. They were surprisingly kind. Sometimes officers feel distant or hurried, but this one listened carefully. He said, "We'll note everything. If anyone shows up, if anything suspicious happens, call us right away. Even if it's just a feeling, you're not alone." That sentence stayed with me. You're not alone, because for so long I had been. After I hung up, Gary came to stand beside me. "Proud of you," he said softly. I smiled weakly. "I'm just trying to do the right thing." "You are." Joy hugged me from behind, wrapping her arms around my middle. "We're okay, Mom." And for the first time in days, I almost believed it. A week passed. No calls, no letters, no car on the street. Every day felt like holding my breath. Every night felt like listening for footsteps, but nothing happened. One evening, Joy came home from school and said, "Mom, I want to paint again." She hadn't painted in days, her brushes had sat untouched, her colors drying on the palette. I smiled. "It's a good idea." She spent the whole afternoon in the sunroom, soft music playing, the late light pouring through the windows. For the first time since everything happened, the house felt alive again. Warm, familiar, Gary grilled dinner on the back porch, humming quietly. The smell of roasted vegetables filled the air, mixing with the tiny bit of autumn chill outside. I set the table. Joy brought her painting to show us, a picture of our house under a bright sky, a picture of home. I felt tears well up. It hit me then. Fear can enter your life suddenly, but healing returns in small moments. A quiet afternoon, a warm dinner, a painting of a place where we felt safe. We ate together, talking about normal things, school, work, weekend plans. The shadows from the past didn't disappear, but they softened just a little. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the living room with a cup of tea. The house was silent again, but this time the silence felt peaceful. I looked at the front door, remembering all the nights I used to stare at the doors in old apartments, waiting for the sound of keys in the lock. I breathed in slowly. I was not that woman anymore. And then a thought came to me. I picked up my phone. I blocked Mark's number, not out of fear but out of choice. A full, calm, solid choice. If he wanted to come, he would come. If he wanted to send a letter, he would send one. But I would not let him follow me through my phone. Not into my thoughts. Not into my home, not anymore. I put the phone down and exhaled deeply. It felt like setting down a heavy weight. Days passed, then a few weeks, then a month. Life began to feel normal again. Joy laughed more, Gary relaxed more, and I walked through the days without that tight feeling in my chest. Sometimes I still remembered the car. Sometimes I remembered the call. Sometimes I even imagined old footsteps behind me when I went to the grocery store. But those moments came less often. And each time I reminded myself, fear is not the truth, safety is not a feeling, it's a reality we build, and our home was safe. One crisp November morning, I stood outside watching the leaves fall when Joy stepped beside me, pulling her sweater tight. She smiled softly. "Mom, you're stronger than you think." I looked at her, surprised. "What makes you say that? You didn't let the past win." Her words warmed me more than the sunlight. I pulled her close, kissed the top of her head, and whispered, "Neither did you." We watched the leaves drift down like little pieces of time, some staying on the ground, some blowing away. And I realized something then, something big, something quiet, something true. Healing doesn't look like a victory. It looks like a morning where nothing hurts. It looks like a home where laughter returns. It looks like choosing to live in the light, even when the shadows still exist. That day, for the first time in a long time, I felt grateful for the life we had built, not perfect, not untouched, but real. Ours. Now, looking back, I understand something even deeper. The past doesn't knock on the door to destroy you. It knocks to remind you of how far you've come. Mark's shadow came to my doorstep, but it didn't take my peace. It didn't break our home. It didn't pull joy into the darkness I had escaped. Instead, it showed us how strong we really were. As a mother. As a family. As people who chose hope over fear. And though I don't know if he will ever call again, I'm not afraid anymore. If that dark sedan ever returns, I won't hide, I won't run, I won't break. Because I'm not the woman who packed a suitcase in the middle of the night all those years ago. I am someone new now. Someone softer, stronger, calmer. Someone who has learned that endings don't always look like doors closing. Sometimes, endings look like beginnings wearing gentle clothes. Like a daughter painting sunlight. Like a husband humming on the porch. Like a cup of warm tea on a peaceful night. Like a life that, despite everything, kept growing. And that, I think, is the quiet miracle we all hope for. The kind that arrives not with noise, but with a soft breath of courage finally exhaled.